I'm Ruby, 34, female. I live in a small, quiet apartment that overlooks the city, a peaceful sanctuary from the meticulous, high-stakes world I inhabit professionally, as a senior gemologist for Blackwoods. One of the most prestigious gem houses in the country, my life revolves around precision, clarity, and integrity. My job is to see the truth hidden within the world's most beautiful stones. But I soon discovered that the most dangerous flaws aren't buried in gems, but in the people you trust the most. This is the story of how my carefully built reputation was targeted, and how I used the very skills of my trade to orchestrate a downfall so precise, so fitting, that no one ever saw it coming. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For 12 years, Blackwoods had been more than a workplace. It was a legacy I was proud to be a part of. I started as an intern, died an eager, and worked my way up to senior gemologist. My office, a sterile white lab filled with microscopes, refractometers, and spectroanalyzers, was my domain. My name was my bond. When I certified a stone, my signature meant it was authentic, its quality unquestionable. Mr. Blackwood, a man who valued tradition and integrity above all, often called me the conscience of the company. He trusted me implicitly, a fact that was both an honor and a heavy weight. My reputation was built on a foundation of meticulous work and unwavering honesty. I had overseen the acquisition and certification of some of the world's most famous stones, including the Azure Star, a flawless 50-carat sapphire that now sat in a private collection in Geneva. My colleagues respected me, and I mentored younger gemologists like Chloe, a bright-eyed and ambitious woman who reminded me of myself when I first started. I thought we had a good relationship, one built on shared passion. The other senior figure in the acquisitions department was Edward. He was the head of acquisitions, a charming, silver-tongued man who could negotiate a deal with a cool confidence that was both impressive and, at times, unsettling. He handled the clients and the money. I handled the stones. Our roles were symbiotic. He brought in the potential jewels, and I provided the final, definitive analysis. We were the gatekeepers of Blackwood's quality. For years, our professional relationship was cordial, efficient, and mutually respectful, or so I believed. I was proud of my work, my life, my flawless reputation. In the world of gemology, a flawless stone is the pinnacle of perfection. I was about to learn that in the world of people, flawless is an illusion, a dangerous one. It makes you a target. The project that would change everything was the acquisition of the Serafina diamond, a legendary 100-carat, internally flawless yellow diamond from a newly discovered mine in South Africa. Its value was estimated at over $50 million. It was the kind of stone that could define a career, and Mr. Blackwood entrusted its verification solely to me. Edward had spent months negotiating the deal, and the pressure was immense. The stone arrived under heavy security, and the moment I held the case in my hands, I felt the familiar thrill mixed with profound responsibility. This was my world. This was where I belonged. Little did I know, the cracks in my world had already begun to form, webbing just beneath the surface, waiting for the right amount of pressure to shatter everything. The first sign of trouble was subtle, easy to dismiss. It came during the initial inspection of the Serafina diamond. Edward was unusually present in the lab, a space he typically avoided. He hovered, making small talk, his eyes darting between my microscope and the diamond. "It's a career maker, isn't it, Ruby?" he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, for all of us. "It's magnificent," I replied, my focus entirely on the stone. "But I need complete concentration, Edward. The slightest miscalculation." Of course," he said, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender, just excited. "The sellers are anxious for the wire transfer. Mr. Blackwood wants this finalized by the end of the week." I nodded, not looking up. The pressure was normal for a deal of this magnitude, but his presence felt off, intrusive. He seemed less interested in the diamond's beauty and more in the speed of its approval. Over the next few days, the pressure mounted in small, insidious ways. An email from Edward seeing Mr. Blackwood, asking for an expedited preliminary report. A casual drop-by from Chloe, asking if I'd found anything interesting, yet, her tone a little too eager. "Edward is so stressed about this," she'd said, sighing dramatically. "He's put so much on the line." I finished my preliminary analysis and found the diamond to be everything it was purported to be. a vibrant, internally flawless yellow diamond of incredible size and clarity. I submitted my report, but my work wasn't done. The final certification required spectrographic analysis, laser inscription verification, and a dozen other tests that took time. This was where my meticulous nature came into play. I never cut corners. The first major crack appeared a week later. Mr. Blackwood called me into his opulent, wood-paneled office. Edward was already there, standing by the window, looking out at the city. "Ruby," Mr. Blackwood began, his brow furrowed. "We have a problem. A potential client for the Serafina, a very important one, has raised a concern. They received an anonymous tip that the diamond's color may not be natural, that it might be treated." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "That's impossible. My initial analysis showed no signs of high-pressure, high-temperature treatment. I'm still conducting the final tests, but the tip was very specific," Edward cut in, turning from the window. His face was a mask of concern, but his eyes were cold. It mentioned a specific laser inscription anomaly that could indicate lab treatment to enhance the color, an anomaly only a true expert would even know to look for. My blood ran cold. The final laser inscription analysis was the very next test on my schedule. How could anyone know about an anomaly I hadn't even looked for yet? Who was this source? I asked. Mr. Blackwood waved a dismissive hand. "Anonymous, as I said. Probably a competitor trying to sabotage the deal, but the client is spooked. I need you to focus entirely on the color origin report, and I need it to be irrefutable." I returned to my lab, my mind racing. The quiet sanctuary now felt like a cage. The anonymous tip felt too precise, too targeted. It wasn't a random shot in the dark. It was a sniper's bullet aimed directly at my process. It was designed to plant a seed of doubt, not just in the stone, but in me. For the first time in my career, I felt a shadow of suspicion fall over my work. Someone was watching me, someone knew my exact methodology, and that someone was using it against me. The next 2 weeks were a blur of intense work and mounting paranoia. I ran the color origin tests 3 separate times, using every piece of equipment at my disposal. The results were consistent. The Serafina's vibrant yellow color was entirely natural. There were no signs of artificial enhancement. I prepared a comprehensive 50-page report, complete with spectrographs, chemical analysis, and microscopic photography. It was the most thorough work of my career. My reputation was on the line, and I left no room for doubt. When I presented the report to Mr. Blackwood and Edward, I felt a sense of triumphant relief. "The color is 100% natural," I stated, walking them through the key findings. The anonymous tip was baseless, malicious. Mr. Blackwood looked relieved, but Edward's expression was harder to read. "Excellent work, Ruby," he said, his tone flat. "This will certainly reassure our client." The deal was finalized. The $50 million wire transfer was made. The Serafina diamond was officially the property of Blackwoods. The company celebrated, but my sense of unease lingered. The mystery of the anonymous tip was a loose thread I couldn't stop pulling at. The bombshell dropped a month later. It came in the form of a legal letter from the buyers, a powerful international consortium. The letter stated that their own independent gemological institute had appraised the Serafina and found it to be a clarity-enhanced diamond. They claimed a microscopic laser drill hole, a common treatment to remove a dark inclusion, had been filled with a foreign substance to make it invisible. This treatment would reduce the diamond's value by nearly half. The letter included a demand for a full refund and additional damages for fraud. Attached was a damning report from their gemologist, complete with photographs of the alleged drill hole. It was a pinprick, almost invisible, something that could easily be missed if you weren't looking for it. The report accused Blackwoods of gross negligence at best and deliberate deception at worst, and my name, Ruby, was on the original, flawless certification. I was summoned to Mr. Blackwood's office. The legal letter was on his desk. Edward and Chloe were also there. Chloe was pale and looked like she was about to be sick. Edward was the picture of righteous fury. "I can't believe this," he boomed, slamming his hand on the desk. "Our reputation ruined. How could you have missed this, Ruby?" I stared at the report, my hands shaking. I had spent over 100 hours examining that diamond under intense magnification. A laser drill hole, even a microscopic one, leaves traces. "I would have seen it. I don't understand." I stammered. "This wasn't there. I swear on my life that stone was internally flawless." "This wasn't there isn't going to hold up in court," Edward retorted. Their report is definitive. This is a catastrophe. Mr. Blackwood, looking older and more frail than I had ever seen him, turned his disappointed eyes on me. Ruby, I trusted you. Your name was the guarantee. And I stand by my analysis, I said, my voice gaining strength. Something is wrong here. This is impossible. Chloe finally spoke, her voice a trembling whisper. I saw you, Ruby, the night before you finalized the report. You were working late. You seemed stressed. You rushed me out of the lab when I came to say good night. I stared at her, bewildered. What? I was concentrating, Chloe. I always work late on major certifications. But you were agitated. She pressed, tears welling in her eyes. You locked the door after I left. It was unusual. It was a lie. A fabrication woven from a thread of truth. I had been working late, but I hadn't been agitated, and I certainly hadn't locked the door in any unusual way. But in that moment, her words, combined with Edward's fury and Mr. Blackwood's disappointment, painted a picture of a sloppy, stressed gemologist who had rushed a $50 million job and made a catastrophic error. My flawless reputation, the one I had spent over a decade building, shattered in that instant. I was suspended, pending a full internal investigation. As I walked out of the office, I saw Edward place a comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder, and in his eyes I saw a flicker of something cold and triumphant. It was then that I knew I hadn't missed an inclusion in the diamond. I had missed the one right in front of me. Suspension was like a waking nightmare. I was locked out of my lab, my email, my life's work. My colleagues, people I had considered friends, wouldn't return my calls. I was a pariah. The industry gossip was brutal. Rumors that I'd been paid off by the sellers, that I was incompetent, that I'd cracked under the pressure. The narrative was being written, and I wasn't the author. For the first few days, I was adrift in a sea of shock and despair. Then the anger set in, a cold, clear anger that burned away the tears. They had not only tried to ruin my career, they had tried to erase my identity. My integrity was all I had, and they had tried to steal it. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to find the truth. My mind, trained to see patterns and anomalies in stones, began to work on the problem. Chloe's lie about me locking the door was the key. It was too specific, too theatrical. It was designed to create suspicion. Why the anonymous tip about the color treatment, the last-minute pressure, and now this? It was a coordinated attack. Edward was the obvious architect, but Chloe's role was crucial. She had provided the eyewitness account that discredited me. I couldn't get into the Blackwoods lab, but I knew its layout and its systems better than anyone. My first call was to Leo, the head of security. Leo was a quiet, observant man, a former police detective who missed the thrill of the investigation. We'd always had a good rapport, built on a mutual respect for detail. "Leo, it's Ruby," I said when he answered. "I know I'm not supposed to contact anyone, but I need your help. I'm being set up." There was a pause. "I can't get involved, Ruby. My job. Your job is to protect the company." I cut in. "The company is being defrauded. They used a lie to suspend me so they could control the narrative. All I'm asking for is information. Security logs. You and I both know that every single keycard entry, every door lock, every camera feed is logged." I could hear him thinking. "What are you looking for?" Chloe claimed I locked her out of the lab the night before I filed the final report. "I want the entry logs for the lab for that entire week. And I want the security footage from the hallway outside, specifically for that night." "The footage is only stored for 30 days, he said. "It's due to be wiped in 2 days. Then you have to act now, Leo. Please," he sighed. "I'll see what I can do. I'll be in touch." While I waited, I focused on the technical aspects of the fraud. How could they have faked the inclusion? Swapping the diamond was out of the question. The stone's dimensions and facet plot were too unique. The inclusion had to have been added after my inspection. That meant someone with high-level gemological skills had to have accessed the diamond in its secure vault after I signed off on it, but before it was shipped to the buyer. The process of clarity enhancement, laser drilling and filling, is incredibly precise. It requires specialized equipment that Blackwoods didn't even own, because we only dealt in natural, untreated stones. So, the treatment didn't happen in-house. This meant the diamond had to have been taken out of the building, treated, and then returned, all without breaking the chain of custody. Leo called back the next day. His voice was low. "You were right to be suspicious. I pulled the logs. The lab door was never locked from the inside that night. Chloe's keycard was used to enter the lab twice after you left, once at 11 p.m. and again at 3 a.m. She was in there for about 15 minutes each time. My heart pounded. "What about the hallway footage? It's interesting," Leo said. At 3:15 a.m., Chloe leaves the lab. 5 minutes later, Edward is seen on camera walking down the hall from the opposite direction. They don't meet on camera, but they both exit the building through the loading dock garage within 10 minutes of each other. The loading dock cameras, unfortunately, were undergoing unscheduled maintenance that night. The maintenance was signed off on by Edward. The pieces clicked into place with the chilling finality of a vault door locking. It was a conspiracy. Chloe's late night visits to the lab weren't to plant evidence. They were to get something. My detailed certification report, my personal notes. She was a lookout and a messenger. The unscheduled maintenance on the loading dock cameras was the real key. That was their window. Edward had used that blind spot to take the diamond off-site. He'd had it treated, brought it back, and put it in the vault for shipping. They knew my report was already filed. They knew no one would look at the stone again. They had created an unseen inclusion, not just in the diamond, but in the company's entire process, and they had used me as the scapegoat to cover their tracks. I had the what and the how. Now I needed the why. Why would Edward, the successful head of acquisitions, risk everything to sabotage a $50 million deal? It didn't make sense as a simple act of jealousy. This was high-stakes financial fraud. He wasn't trying to just make me look bad. He was trying to make the company pay. My mind went back to the sellers of the Serafina diamond, a new mining corporation. Edward had spent months on the deal. He had a relationship with them. What if he wasn't working against them, but with them? What if the plan was to sell a flawless diamond, have it discreetly treated after certification, and then have the flaw discovered by the buyer? The result, the buyer demands a refund, the sellers get their diamond back, and they keep the $50 million. A classic long con. Blackwoods would be left with a treated diamond worth half the price, a massive financial loss, and a ruined reputation. Edward's cut from such a scheme would be enormous. It was a brilliant, evil plan, and my flawless reputation was the key to making it work. They needed my unimpeachable certification to legitimize the initial flawless stone. My downfall was a necessary casualty to sell the lie. Armed with this theory, I knew I couldn't just go to Mr. Blackwood. Edward would deny everything, Chloe would cry, and the evidence from Leo was circumstantial. They would paint me as a disgruntled, paranoid ex-employee. I needed something more. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed a confession. My plan began to form, built around Edward's two greatest weaknesses, his greed and his arrogance. He believed he had one. He believed I was a broken woman, sitting at home in disgrace. He would never suspect that I was hunting him. First, I needed to create a new identity. I used a burner phone and a new email address to create a profile for Helena Vargas, a private wealth consultant representing an anonymous ultra-high net worth client. I spent a week building her online presence, a professional website, a LinkedIn profile with connections to obscure but legitimate-sounding European family offices. Helena's specialty was acquiring rare, off-market gemstones for clients who valued discretion above all else. Next, I needed bait. Using my insider knowledge, I crafted a story about a newly discovered, mythical stone, the Crimson Tear, a 20-carat, flawless red diamond. Red diamonds are the rarest gems on Earth. A flawless 20-carat stone would be priceless, easily fetching over $100 million. I created a fake geological survey report and a backstory about a reclusive family in Brazil who had owned it for generations and now needed to liquidate it quietly. The final piece was the approach. I couldn't contact Edward directly. It had to come through a channel he trusted. I researched his professional network and found my target, a slightly vain, social, climbing gem dealer in Antwerp named Marcus, whom I knew Edward occasionally used for sourcing. Posing as Helena Vargas, I contacted Marcus. I explained that my client was seeking a legacy stone and was prepared to pay an unprecedented finder's fee for absolute discretion. I presented him with the story of the Crimson Tear. Marcus, smelling the biggest commission of his life, took the bait instantly. I may know someone who has the resources and ambition for a play like this. He told me, his voice slick with excitement. I'm sure you do, I replied coolly, but be warned, my client is particular. The deal must be handled with the utmost secrecy. Any hint of a public auction or a leak, and we disappear. I knew Marcus would go straight to Edward. The prospect of a secret $100 million deal with a massive commission attached, was a temptation Edward's greedy soul could never resist. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for the shark to smell the blood in the water. It took less than 48 hours. My burner phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. "Is this Helena Vargas?" A smooth, confident voice asked. It was Edward, who is calling. I replied, my voice altered slightly, cooler, more formal. "My name is Edward. I'm the head of acquisitions at Blackwoods. I believe our mutual acquaintance, Marcus, may have spoken to you." "He may have," I said evasively. "I speak to many people. About a certain Crimson Stone," he pressed. "I represent a consortium with the capital and the appetite for such a unique opportunity. I can guarantee the discretion you require." We spoke for an hour. I played the part of Helena perfectly demanding, aloof, unimpressed by his credentials. I made it clear that my client had been burned before and that trust was paramount. He, in turn, worked hard to impress me, boasting of his connections and his ability to close complex, off-market deals. He was arrogant, just as I had counted on. The final hook was the location. I insisted that any meeting to view the non-existent geological reports and ownership documents had to be on neutral ground, a place with no corporate oversight. I suggested a private suite at a luxury hotel. He agreed immediately. The day of the meeting, my nerves were frayed, but my resolve was like steel. Leo had agreed to help with the final phase. He had a friend who specialized in private security and surveillance. The hotel suite was discreetly wired with audio and video recorders. Leo would be in the next room, monitoring everything. I dressed the part of Helena, a sharp, expensive suit, understated jewelry, an air of quiet power. When Edward arrived, he was exactly as I expected, charming, impeccably dressed, and radiating an aura of predatory confidence. "Helena," he said, shaking my hand, "a pleasure to finally meet in person." We spent the first 20 minutes in a verbal dance. He tried to get more information about my client. I deflected and steered the conversation toward the principles of trust and risk. Finally, I leaned forward. "Edward, my client is prepared to move forward with a $100 million acquisition, but they have one final reservation. They are aware of the recent unpleasantness at Blackwoods, the Serafina diamond." His smile tightened. "An unfortunate situation, a simple case of human error. The gemologist responsible has been dealt with." "Human error is one thing," I said, my voice like ice. "But the speed with which the flaw was found and the nature of the fraud allegations, it suggests a more complex scenario. My client cannot risk their capital if there are internal security issues at your firm." He shifted in his seat, his confidence wavering for the first time. "I can assure you our security is second to none." This was the moment, the pressure test. "Then tell me how it was done," I said calmly. "Off the record, explain to me how a $50 million diamond with a flawless certification can suddenly manifest a flaw after the fact. Reassure me that you have identified and sealed that loophole. Prove to me that my client's investment will be safe with you." He hesitated, studying my face, weighing the risk against the $100 million prize. I held his gaze, my expression unreadable, his greed one. "It wasn't a loophole," he said, a smug smile spreading across his face. "It was a work of art. You see, the gemologist, Ruby, she was good, too arrogant. Her flawless reputation was actually a liability. It made her predictable." He then proceeded to lay it all out. He explained how he had partnered with the sellers, how he had used Chloe to get copies of my notes, how he had disabled the cameras and taken the stone to a private lab in the dead of night to have the microscopic drill hole added. "The beauty of it," he gloated, "is that her own detailed report became the weapon against her. She was so proud of her work, she never imagined someone could alter the subject after the fact. We used her diligence to prove her incompetence. She wrote her own ending." I let him finish, my heart hammering against my ribs. In the next room, Leo was recording every self-incriminating word. "So you orchestrated the entire thing," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I orchestrated a business deal," he corrected, leaning back, puffed up with pride. "A very, very profitable one, and I'm about to do it again." I stood up. "No, Edward, you're not." I reached up and slowly pulled off the wig I was wearing, letting my own hair fall to my shoulders. I took off the glasses. The color drained from his face. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by pure slack. Jawed panic. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Hello, Edward." I said, my voice no longer Helena's, but my own. "It's Ruby, and you're right. I did write the ending, this one." Before he could react, the door to the suite opened and Leo walked in, holding a small hard drive. "We've got it all," he said, his expression grim, every word. Edward stared at me, his eyes wide with the terror of a man who had just realized the trap he'd so eagerly walked into had snapped shut. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Leo and I took the recording directly to Mr. Blackwood. We played the entire confession for him in his office. To see the color drain from his face as he listened to Edward's boastful, treacherous words was both vindicating and heartbreaking. He had been betrayed by a man he had treated like a son. When the recording ended, there was a long, heavy silence. Mr. Blackwood looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and admiration. "Ruby," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I am so sorry. I failed you. I let my trust in him blind me to the truth. He fooled all of us." I replied quietly. Legal and law enforcement were brought in immediately. Edward and Chloe were fired and arrested before the end of the day. The recording was airtight. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Chloe confessed immediately, agreeing to testify against Edward in exchange for a lesser charge. Edward's arrogance had been his undoing. He had been so sure of his intellectual superiority that he never considered the possibility that the broken gemologist he had dismissed could outmaneuver him. The legal battle with the Serafina's buyers was still complex, but with Edward's confession, Blackwood's was now the victim of a multi-million-dollar fraud, not the perpetrator. The company's lawyers were able to renegotiate the situation, recovering a significant portion of the financial loss. The Serafina diamond was returned, its flaw now a permanent part of its history, a testament to the greed that had scarred it. Mr. Blackwood asked me to return to my position as senior gemologist. I agreed, but on my own terms. I was promoted to head of gemological sciences and quality assurance, a new role that gave me complete oversight over the entire certification and security process. Leo was also promoted, becoming the director of corporate security. Together, we implemented a new system of checks and balances, ensuring that a betrayal like Edward's could never happen again. My reputation was not just restored, it was enhanced. Within the industry, the story of what happened became a quiet legend, not just of the fraud, but of how I had used my skills to uncover it. I was no longer just the conscience of the company, I was its protector. Sometimes, when I am alone in my lab late at night, examining a new stone under the microscope, I think of Edward. He saw my dedication to perfection as a weakness he could exploit. He was wrong. My dedication to the truth, to seeing what lies beneath the surface, was and always will be my greatest strength. He tried to ruin me, to write me into a story of failure and disgrace, but he forgot that I am the expert in finding flaws. And his were the easiest I had ever seen. He didn't write my ending. He just gave me the raw material for a much better one, a brilliant finish.